Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is planning NTB Roundtable as a regular monthly sessions. So today's session is organized by USAID supported the union-led IDF-TB project along with the consortium partner KNCV Foundation. So this NTB Roundtable, it will act as an international knowledge sharing platform. We have all the guests and participants joined from across the country and abroad. Today, we will be discussing about experience sharing related to DR-TB diagnostics, policies, and what is in the pipeline. So I request Dr. K. Sachdeva, the Regional Director of Union Southeast Asia, to welcome all the participants.
Thank you, all distinguished speakers, all distinguished participants and others who are present in this workshop, in this NTB roundtable. It's a proud moment for all of us, and it's also one of the topic which is very apt in the current settings. As every day we keep on hearing that there are new diagnostics for TB and drug-resistant TB which are coming in the pipeline. Many practitioners of drug-resistant TB, including national programs, are in a dilemma. They are confused, or I should say spoiled for choice on which diagnostic to pick up, which is the best one for them to get the best results in their own local context. So all these are very challenging. The esteemed speakers will share their experiences from various parts of the world. What we need to do with this newer diagnostic? How do we actually then either scale up or say, yes, we need them, we don't need them, or they need still more refinements. Some of them may be disruptive. I know quite a few in the pipeline who may be disruptive on the price front. There may be some disruptions on the technology front. So we will hear from all the experts here. With these few words, I welcome you all to this workshop and look forward to a very enriched learning through this process. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sachdeva, for welcoming. I request Mr. Ganesh Acharya. Mr. Ganesh Acharya is with us. So we are starting this hearing from Ganesh Acharya, who is also a TB survivor. Over to you, Ganesh Acharya.
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh.
Sorry, Rakesh, before we go. Sorry, Ganesh. Can I appeal to all the participants to mute their microphone if they are not speaking? So because there are some background noise coming on. Sorry for that. Thank you, Ganesh. You can go ahead.
Yeah, over to Ganesh.
Yes, thank you to having me here. So can I share my screen? Is it visible?
Yes, Ganesh, it's visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Namaste. Thank you. Happy to be a part of TB diagnostic webinar and experience sharing on the TB diagnostic. I think this is a monthly meeting, and thank you, Dr. Rakesh, organizing these regular meetings. So today, I'm more about talk about person, perspective. I'm very happy to say something like giving us a space for the survivor and for TB affected community here, because always in medicalized thing and we expertise in some medical way only. So it's very good to, right direction for the TB, and thank to IDF India project to give us the space to say from community order also. So today I'm going to talk about life experience of TB. So I'm from Mumbai, India. So I survived TB twice. And today I'm representing a TB high burden countries, low middle income countries, and specifically marginalized community where I belong to this thing. Next slide. Okay. So yes, diagnostic matters to me, to everyone. Diagnostic matters to ending TB. So why I'm saying that matters to everyone? Because personally, I had TB twice. So first time I had TB in pulmonary. So, I know I have gone through this, so many things. It's happened so many things, and TB diagnostic, even disease management, even surviving. So I'm not going to the whole thing, but today it was the topic, the diagnostic matter. So, I am surrounded by the risk factor like below poverty law, your living condition. I had, malnourished. I had addiction, smoking, and comorbidity also. So having said this, all risk factor, I had severe symptoms. It's a very horrible symptoms. So my family, my parents, my who very close to me, they tired to me, roaming me like one symptom to one doctor to another. In India, in like a urban setting, we live in the very small slum, and if I'm not walking, if I'm not able to walk to one place to another place, so there is a small doctors available in our own area. So I have to, go from one doctor to another doctor to another doctor to another doctor. So it's like who will manage to my TB? I heard only my teenager, TB, but in paper, in hand, I had only the X-ray films. So, and one doctor, treat me like, no, this is like a pneumonia or asthma. And he referred to the public hospital. So my mom denied because close is a urban health center. I've been there. And, for there also, for, urban health center also, they said, no, you have to go to sanitarium or big hospital. So it's for a 2 to 3 months, I'm traveling to it with very severe pain with symptoms. So I finally get admission in this hospital. So it's a sanitarium. And then, one doctor just consulted me like, no, this is a pneumothorax. I don't know. So it's a cavity in my lungs or something like that. And they also just do the referral to the peripheral hospital. So it's the 2-3 months, the first one I had pulmonary TB. It's a completely delay in the diagnostic and delay in the, misdiagnostic also. So for me, the diagnostic path, like today's science, you can say like CVNAT technology, you can get the report in the 1 day or maximum DST, 4 to 6 is culture. So this is certain, certain days you have to get the report. For me, as a surviving, the diagnostic path is uncertain. In a different scenario, like a rural city be different, like a Mumbai city, like very, high density city is different, but it's uncertain to say that how many days we can get the diagnostic reports. So it's a delay the diagnostic. It's not only the delay the diagnostic, it's a delay from the person also. It's a very tiring process. So even for the delay for the treatment and inaccurate therapy, and delaying the saving the life also, if you are not going to early diagnose. And even for my case, I had pulmonary TB, and I have to protect my community, but without diagnose, I'm just roaming from same house, without window, without ventilation. It's a delay in the protecting our community also. And there's a lack of compliance, lack of TB services, like if I visit my nearest center, it had to be something like one window services. So there is a lack of innovation and research also. So why such a condition for me? So still today, this impact me, everything is stopped. My daily life of the teenager, my school, my own people, I was completely homeless. Even I'm just sharing the one photo here. So this September, one guy similar to me, he's just a 14 years boy, I'm DR-TB in Mumbai, and his own brother abandoned him. So he's just living in the slum in the corner. That is his home now. But he had to, last 6 months he has roaming one hospital to another. So this is how we survive in the condition. We have to this one corner, I put it in the medicine. So we don't have enough food, but we have to take the medicine. If I'm very sick, we have to go to the hospital, but it's still, we don't have that approach to how to deal a diagnostic in the one setup. So my past and present, though I'm more talking about scientific way, like despite the medical, advancement in science toward the progress, the problem of the TB care, those things so problematic it lasts like 20 years or 40 years ago. It's still similar. So then I decided to be a, TB voice, is speak out about myself. So somehow I can change my policy, and from ground wise, some with the affected TB community, how important TB care to ensure timely TB diagnosis, research, implementation, innovation, and for the person, the important of the outcome of the diagnosis and treatment is these all things will be addressed throughout the TB care. So lastly, for me, like it for the science, there is so many tests available, so many diagnostic facility, so many things there. But for me, like I would depend on the X-ray, ultrasound. Ultrasound also, I have to share my one small incident. So when I admitted in the sanatorium, there is ultrasound not available. So I was very sick. And I was totally abandoned. I'm very happy in being a sanitarium with I get a free food, I get milk, I get a banana, I get even egg. This nice food, I have to, balance myself. But when doctor referred me for ultrasound, I have to go to the another hospital. I don't have money to pay for that hospital because my body is not that working to go in that. Even for the transport, small things people say about transport, but for me, it's very difficult to travel from one hospital to another hospital to getting the ultrasound. So this is how, no comprehensive diagnostic for me. But today I can see there is so many, tools there. So even for gene sequencing, TrueNAT, there's so many things available. So for my story, my life with TB, so today TB is a bigger challenge. So I can see the drug-resistant TB, pediatric TB, always underdiagnosed, antimicrobial resistant. Even for the recent WHO report also indicate that TB is rising trend. So TB is a global now. So I said, having said the global, that this is a problem of the global leaders. So it's leadership. So TB should be a very, prioritize and focus. Also, when you see the data on the rising the TB, but you have to think about, you have to have comprehensive diagnostic services also. And sometimes it's not putting in the paper or just put in the guideline, but should be is a very closer to the where our work. So that is very closer to us to, reaching the health seeking to get the test done. So end of my session. So there is a life after the pain, suffer, stigma, abandon. Yes, there is also right to science. There is also the big global solidarity, determination, innovation, even equitable use of tools. These all important things should apply immediately for the TB, and then we can achieve the, early diagnostic. And this is right to science to very important for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ganesh, for setting the context. So over to Mansa for taking the session forward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rakesh, and thank you very much, Ganesh, for those touching presentation, because this really highlights that we still have a lot to do, and also it highlights the importance of involving all the TB survivors in decision making, and also supporting us to work together and fight against TB. So then we'll move next to the next presenter, and is Dr. Nazir Ismail, who is the team lead for diagnostics at Global TB Program, WHO Geneva. So Dr. Nazir will talk about recent WHO guidelines on rapid diagnostic tests for DR-TB. Dr. Nazir, the floor is yours. You can share your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Mansa. Just confirm you can see the slides and you can hear me?
Yes, we can see the slide, we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you for the college for inviting me here today and to share WHO perspectives on DR-TB testing. So just before we start off, and I think a very good lead off from Mr. Ganesh's presentation about the issues around diagnosing TB. And I think it's a very central point in the entire pathway for care. And I think the challenges of delayed diagnosis are well described by him. So in terms of the WHO policies, these are really grounded on evidence, and the recommendations are derived through a very formal process of assessing the evidence to develop policies. And what I'll be presenting is an update on a diagnostic test for drug-resistant TB. That's what the focus is for today. And I'll be speaking about the 3 new classes of tests that we've recommended last year. Also, just to note that we are looking at the next generation sequencing as a diagnostic tool, and that will aim to have some guidance out next year. And then I'll briefly touch on some norms and standards and target product profiles that are in development. So briefly, just in terms of the WHO policy guidelines, we've had several technologies. We've seen it in the previous slide around the use of Expert and TrueNet as initial tests for TB and rifampicin detection. Just note that we've moved now towards the class-based recommendations. So the terminology to be using now for the classes of molecular tests are things like low complexity or moderate complexity, considering variety of characteristics of tests in terms of its deployment and usability. So looking at what's new and what's changed, this is the contents page of the guidelines, the 2021 update on the right-hand side. It's publicly available. We've grouped the technologies into 3 chapters as such: test for initial diagnosis of TB with drug resistance detection. The second is initial diagnostic test for the diagnosis of TB without drug resistance detection. And the third is related to follow-on diagnostic tests for the detection of additional drug resistance. So in the first group, there's Expert and TrueNet, and we'll talk about the moderate complexity just now. In the second group, I think people are familiar with the LAMP assay and the LF-LAM. And then the follow-on technologies are classically the LPAs that people are familiar with. But I'll talk about 2 new products that we now recommend. So first up is a new class of tests called the moderate complexity test. And these are a group of tests which include systems like the Abbott, the Roche, the BD-MAX, and the Heinz systems. These were reviewed for both detection of TB, but also for rifampicin and INH. So really upfront testing for both RIF and INH. We know that INH occurs quite frequently. Up to 1 million patients annually have INH resistance that is largely not detected. These class of tests are called moderate complexity, recognizing that these are not sort of your highly decentralizable tests, but they are higher throughput and more lab-based technologies that can deal with large volumes and very well suited for highly populous cities. So if you look at the performance of this class of tests, was quite impressive when we reviewed the evidence. Overall pooled sensitivity was 93% against a culture reference standard and a high pooled specificity. So really almost as good as culture. In terms of detection of rifampicin and INH, was really good, very comparable to all other technologies that we know of for rapid detection of RIF and INH. So essentially, able to detect both RIF and INH with high accuracy as well, and upfront testing to address some of the gaps. In terms of the recommendations, the guideline development reviewed the evidence and made a positive recommendation for its use among people with signs and symptoms of pulmonary TB. And the recommendations were limited to respiratory samples, at least based on the evidence that we had, for the detection of pulmonary TB and for RIF and INH rather than culture and phenotypic DST. Based on the evidence, the group also extrapolated these recommendations to include people living with HIV, adolescents, and children. However, there was insufficient data to make any determination for extrapulmonary TB. So an important new addition to initial tests for TB that adds to the options. The next is what we now call the low complexity automated NETs. This is a follow-on test after rifampicin resistance is determined. And the first in class for this product, for this class of test is the Expert XDR cartridge, and we will be looking at other assays down the line. Just before I continue, we've moved towards the class-based recommendations to allow more competition. So obviously we have, this is a first in class, but there could be other products that could fall within the same class. But anyway, for the Expert XDR cartridge assessments that were included as the first in class for this product, it detects resistance to 4 drugs up front, and overall the performance was exceptionally good. For INH resistance detection was actually superior than what we've seen for LPAs, for example, so very good for INH detection. Fluoroquinolone resistance also exceptionally good, and for ethionamide and amikacin, which are more later utilization drugs, are also very good. In terms of the recommendations, after reviewing the evidence, the group made a positive recommendation for the use of this class of tests for pulmonary TB, and to be used as the initial test for detection of resistance to INH and fluoroquinolones rather than culture-based DST. It was a conditional recommendation based on the certainty of evidence. But importantly, what you'll notice is this, the first recommendation applies for the use of this test, both for rifampicin resistant TB, but also rifampicin susceptible TB, so all bacteriologically confirmed TB, meaning that it could be used for detecting INH monoresistance, and also guide the use of fluoroquinolones in the shorter regimens, but also for rifampicin-resistant TB. The second and third recommendations apply to the drugs ethionamide and amikacin, and again, positive recommendation for their use. The extrapolation based on the evidence was to include its use for both for adults, for adolescents, for children, people living with HIV, and also for extrapulmonary TB. So basically for universal use as a rapid decentralizable test for rapid fluoroquinolone resistant detection in INH. And then the third product that was reviewed and recommended was what we now call a high complexity reverse hybridization assay, working very much like the current LPAs, but this was for pyrazinamide, the first molecular test to rapidly detect pyrazinamide resistance. And it's a conditional recommendation as well, and unfortunately the evidence was only available for isolates, and therefore the recommendation is limited to its use on isolates, but an important step forward in rapid detection for pyrazinamide, and overall performance was also quite good. Just moving on quickly, so we also accompany the guidelines with an operational handbook, and there are a few important things that I'll just briefly highlight, but you can find this online as well. So we've updated the drug susceptibility phenotypic testing critical concentrations, and for rifampicin, this was revised downwards as we identified that the critical concentration may have been overly high, and now the consolidated table includes the critical concentrations for all drugs for Group A, Group B, Group C. And if you look at Group A, includes critical concentrations for the fluoroquinolones, for bedaquiline, linezolid, clofazimine, etc. And then we've also added in the document a flow diagram providing you sort of an algorithmic flow and the diagnostic choices that are available depending on the first test and what subsequent tests should be used. Quickly, just turning on to a few new additions that have come forward. So to support the use of sequencing technologies into the future, we issued our first catalog of mutations for TB that was done, issued last year. and a 2023 update is in progress to address some of the gaps that we identified. We're essentially a large database of over 40,000 isolates with associations. So there's, I think, 17,000 mutations identified and categorization of the association with resistance or susceptibility. So important for future use and also to guide development. And then the last thing just to highlight is that we also issued a target product profile for next generation DST. And this was really to guide development of new products to provide more rapid testing for particularly the new and repurposed drugs. And that's also publicly available. So as I said, I mean, there are new developments in place. We will be looking at next-gen sequencing in the upcoming year, and also updating target product profiles for screening tests and TB detection tests that could be used more decentralized. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope good luck with the session as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Nazir, for the important presentation highlighting the recommendations from WHO and also what we are expecting in the future. So if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat. So we'll have a discussion and answer questions later. So but for the meantime, if you can also answer questions in the chat, you can go ahead with that. Thank you very much once again. So we'll move to the next presenter, is Mr. Andril Slyzkyi. So Andril is a laboratory consultant at KNCV Tuberculosis Foundation. So Andril will talk about overview of diagnostics in the pipeline of DR-TB. Okay, Andril, the floor is yours. Andril, we see your presentation, but we are not hearing about you.
Can you hear me now?
I hear, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for technical difficulties. Thank you, Mansa. Today I would like to give a brief presentation on the brief overview. Wait a second, why it's not moving? Right. Yeah. So in my today's presentation, I would like to give you a brief overview of the DR-TB diagnostic trends, and starting from 2 slides, which shows the phases of the process of WHO policy development and the TB diagnostic critical pathway. Here you could see the simplified pathway for TB diagnostics development, which includes the main following steps like concept and feasibility, development, evaluation, and demonstration of the developed products. This is just to give you the flavor of the complexity and the like a duration, overall duration of the process for the new technologies to come to into our hands. So, for example, these stages also include the steps like concept and feasibility, include the business planning, definition of intended use, feasibility, proof of concept, prototype, stakeholders mapping. And the transition to the next stage could happen only upon completion of the previous stage, while there are steps which could take place simultaneously or overlap. The failing of a single steps could lead to the disruption of the pathway and may result in termination of new product development or returning to the previous steps. To study the complete TB diagnostics critical pathway, you may refer to the web links which you see on the slide. And on this slide, you could see the the snapshot of the products in the pipeline. This slide, this web page, you can access on Find Diagnostics resources. You see that on the left, in the feasibility stage, we have a lot of products. We have a lot of products. They move to development phase. Probably not all of them will be successfully enter this stage, and then they're in validation stage, and then you see that the increased number of the products in regulatory phase, which also the lengthy process, and you may have some products which stay there for a longer period of time than the others. And our primary routine diagnostics today is mostly molecular based, means that we more and more rely on the techniques which detect nucleic acids and mycobacteria metabolites. However, we still utilize all the previous generation of tests, and we rarely see that something is phasing out. Sequencing of mycobacterial genome continue the evolution of the molecular methods, and in fact, sequencing is in the origin of the methods such as LPA and cartridge-based nucleic acid testing technologies. So let's see why we need to add another more complex molecular method to our diagnostics menu. When we speak of genome sequencing in general, and specifically for Mycobacterium tuberculosis, we usually distinguish two approaches, whole genome sequencing, or WGS, and targeted genome sequencing, or TGS. Both belongs to the group of next generation sequencing technologies. And the whole genome sequencing speaks for itself. We sequence all the 4 million, several hundreds thousand of base pairs of genome of M. tuberculosis. In targeted genome sequencing, we aim at the regions of our particular interest, those which comprise genes responsible for resistance, and some other regions which allow us to characterize species and lineages. While whole genome sequencing consume more sequencing capacity of the instruments and time per one sample, and usually require culture isolates to provide sufficient DNA input. Targeted sequencing utilizes PCR technology to amplify target regions, so it can work with native unprocessed type of specimen. So currently, what is happening in terms of the developments in this area? In 2019, FIND project called Seq and Treat, funded by Unitate, was launched with the intention to generate clinical evidence to support WHO global guidance on the use of targeted NGS for DR-TB diagnosis, so that patients can be linked to the most appropriate care as fast as possible. In addition, it established a WHO global clinical knowledge base, evaluates proof of principle delivery models of integrating targeted NGS in existing diagnostic work streams, and facilitate inclusion of recommended NGS solutions into global procurement mechanism and adoption by low and middle income countries. In this study, 3 targeted next generation sequencing technologies solutions were included from 3 manufacturers, and the study is expected to be completed this year, but we of course might expect a delay, because you see that the period of study very much overlaps with the COVID pandemic, and it also probably was affected by that event. Moving or not moving. As an example, you could see that on the left side of the slide, at targets and the antibiotics for which we have the prediction of resistance using the particular assay called Diplex MIC-TB assay, one of the competitor in this study. So why we would like to use genotypic DST, and here it says phenotypic versus genotypic, but I would not say that it versus, it's still in addition, or so one test to complement the other. So we know that phenotypic DSTs are slow type of assays, and they require specific settings, complex settings like biosafety level 3 environment, while sequencing technologies there could be implemented in lower settings, lower complexity settings, and also they're much faster, and it gives us more, often gives us more answers, but still could give us, left us puzzled what the new, how to say, findings, how they could be interpreted. For example, like a new drug like predominant, we still need phenotypic DST to work together with sequencing and allow us to determine mutations that are responsible for drug-resistant phenotypes. So far, we don't have much knowledge in this area because we don't have, luckily, we don't have much cases of resistance, but we already know that specific lineages have elevated MICs for predominant, and in this case, sequencing could give us even the prediction how the particular strain of mycobacteria will respond to the treatment. And as our previous speaker, Dr. Nazir, mentioned, WHO is working on the catalog, updated catalog of mutations, with the which will include those targets and those drugs which were not included in the first version. And in summary, the next generation sequencing seems to be a promising diagnostic tool, a very powerful tool, although very complex. DNA sequencing based DSTs may reduce need eventually for phenotypic DSTs, and WHO reference standards for interpretation drugs resistance confirm mutation in the development, and I think it will be a living instrument which will be updated as soon as our knowledge is growing. And in a few slides, I would also give you, would like to give you information on the practical examples of the use of sequencing in projects which are happening now. One of them run by KNCV Tuberculosis Foundation with partners in several countries, and including Netherlands and countries like Tanzania, Kyrgyzstan, and Vietnam. So that slide gives you just an example how quickly and how to say, what the changes, what the dramatic changes we've seen during last 2 decades in terms of the lowering the complexity of this of sequencing technologies, and at the same time dramatically reducing the price and turnaround time. So from billions of dollars for sequencing single genome and 10 years duration of this project, we now moving toward the 1,000 or even less for single genome, and just a few hours, like let's say a couple of days to do this. And here you see that on the right side, the MinION, the nanopore sequencing-based technology. On the left, you see Sanger sequencing facilities. They're doing basically the same things, but on the completely different time scale. MinION can give you answer within hours, while you need days, weeks to do like classic Sanger sequencing. And so far, all these technologies were used mainly for research, for fundamental studies, for some experimental clinical use, but not routinely being implemented in our practice. There are a few examples of how this technology being used. In undisputable, it's portable. It's could be deployed in low resource settings. It has this mobile format of the instrument, and basically you can do sequencing anywhere where you have a minimal set of instruments and settings. It was used in Ebola surveillance, lately in and on a large scale in COVID-19 genomic surveillance. And specifically in the project which run by KNCV, our aim is give access to sequencing to all in the most in the settings which is most close to the patients. And also we would like to contribute to AMR surveillance and ultimately to set new standards for diagnostics of infectious diseases and AMR within by the end of the project. So this is our approach which we use. So we preparing at the central level with our partners in the Netherlands. We first try different solutions for tuberculosis, for COVID, for other priority pathogen for the countries, and then we deploy this to the central level in the countries, and then there will be gradually deploy this technology just further to the regional and peripheral level. Thank you, that's it. And thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andre, for the interesting presentations highlighting the importance of sequencing and also the new generation of sequencing. And the most important is the Dream Fund from KNCV, so which is working to bring a diagnostic nearer to the patients, which is very important, and that's what we need at this moment. So we'll move to the next presentation. So, and the next presenter is Ms. Nguyen Thi Kim from the National TB Reference Lab of Vietnam, and she will talk about Vietnam experience with the simple one-step stool processing method for TB diagnostic. So Ms. Nguyen, you can see, yeah, we can see your screen now.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Nguyen. I'm from Vietnam National TB Reference Lab. Today is a very honor for me to have a chance to share our country's experience in SOS method implementation. In Vietnam, we have rolled out the Expert in 2011 under TBK1 project, which is collaborated between BNTP and KNCV. and children and people living with HIV are priority group at first. And before 2020, the specimen for pulmonary TB diagnosis are sputum, bronchiectasis, gastric group, and another kind of specimen which is an easy approach for children, especially children under 5 and people living with HIV. Is one of our most wanted. It's the reason why in 2020, when WHO has rapid communication for students, the NIL has tried some methods. However, some methods for student processing, like using filter centrifugation, flotation with super solution. We also piloted the flotation with super solution in one side. However, this method shows that they are not suitable for routine implementation because more equipment needed, more solution preparation time, and more processing time, more 30 minutes to 1 hour for the preparation. And till May 2020, under approval of Director NTP, SOS method was piloted by collaborated with NTP and KNCV Vietnam and we headquarters Netherlands. There are 10 labs joined for piloting, including national lab, regional lab, some provincial lab, some district lab, and 2 children's hospital. And we have 1 provincial lab and 2 district lab was expected for people living with HIV screening. And during the pilot methods for adult methods, the pilot implementation for adult methods, online training was organized for central and regional lab. Start with theory by experts from KNCV headquarters, and then the training will be practiced on site, and then record video, and experts will give comment and suggestion. And after then, provincial and district level. At the provincial and district level, the trainer from central and regional labs will support on-site practical guidance, and then they will be evaluated by panel provided by NIL, and then the trainer and trainee will be discussed the video recording. After then, a weekly online meeting for the first 2 months. The expert from KNCV will answer questions and spot the problem side with high error rates. And we started expand implementation from 2021 with on-site training for clinical and laboratories, including collecting samples, performing tests, and reporting. And here are some our experiences in AWS methods related to SOP. The first, the sample specimen container we utilize is sputum cup. This is a container available in on TB lab site level. The next, we utilize bamboo stick for the stool sampling and plant the stool in SR solution before shaking. And bamboo stick is also available in own microscopy size. The third, the proper amount of stool for the test is 0.6 to 0.8 grams. And some technicians was trained to estimate the amount of specimen, and then monthly they require to check the estimate using a balance. Related to training, the training included technique for introduction, sample collection, sample transfer, report form, and practice. Practice training will be organized for every 2 or 4 trainees per channel to ensure the quality of practice. And we emphasize on compliance in terms of processing time. It's necessary to keep the error rate within the acceptable range of the technique. We also use some samples from people with smear positive 1+ or higher for training to provide evidence of efficiency to participants. And then the next experience is we follow practice steps closely, explain the reason for each step to help trainees remember the important note of the practice section. Another thing is record a video for of the practice process and review and discuss after then if needed. And in early the next thing is early follow-up through meeting or quality indicators is required for timely technical support. A group of besides the trainee from NIL, we have a group channel at the regional laboratory will be support NIL in on-site training. Related to implementation, for exam, we training for 1 to 3 provinces, and after that, 1 to 3 provinces will be receive an official letter announcing the implementation after training. And in first 2 to 3 months, monitoring by online meeting or implementation quality indicators is necessary for timely technical assistance. And training advanced method in we also give training advanced methods in retraining classes or training new the expert side. In Vietnam, student specimen will be approved will be used for TB suspect are children and people living with HIV who cannot provide quality sputum. And we also implement a student collection for children with household contact or children with suspect TB who cannot produce sputum in active screening campaign. And a side with you for student is the expert MTB as who WHO recommendation as well as expert MTB outro because we have a very good result after pilot outro. Here's actually after implementation officially we input the data in the common form of entity. So in some side with the student implementation, they say that it increases the chance for children to be diagnosed TB and for completing the presentation, I would like to give the thanks to KNCV Netherlands and KNCV Vietnam who was introduced and supported us to pilot the advanced method. I also thanks to KNCV Vietnam and PATH IDDN Project Vietnam has supported us to expand advanced. And next is the director of Vietnam NTP have supported a manager of lab unit, directed and co-directed the operation. I also thank to SF team and NAL as well as own expert side in Vietnam. Thank you very much for the attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kim, for sharing the interesting experience of Vietnam on the SOS tool method. So we'll move with the last presentation. So A presentation is from Dr. Sivakumar, who is the head of bacteriology division at the ICMR NIRT lab. And he will talk about the realization, the potentials of NGS in transmissions, dynamics, and drug resistant prediction of tuberculosis. So Dr. Siva, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you see my slide?
You can see Dr. Siva. Can you make it in slideshow?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, now it's visible.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning to all, and I'd like to thank Union and the KNCV for inviting me for this talk. And so I'll be talking about the potential of next generation sequencing in transmission dynamics and drug resistance prediction of tuberculosis, mainly in drug resistance prediction, and also I'll share the share our data or our experience on transmission dynamics as well. So I'll not go into the details here. I just want to set a stage why we need whole genome sequencing or next generation sequencing. So globally, drug resistant tuberculosis is a bigger threat. And in recent global TB report, it has shown that there is an increase in 6.5% of MDR-TB and RR-TB compared to the previous year in 2020. So timely drug resistant detection is essential for global tuberculosis management program. And the present methodology, including phenotypic tests and molecular tests. Phenotypic tests takes quite a long time, and it is not very cost effective since it's costly. And molecular diagnostics like GeneXpert, MDR, MTB-RIF, all this covers very limited targets, and this limitation can only be overcome by whole genome sequencing. And apart from this, there are other diagnostic gaps, like phenotypic testing lacks often accuracy and reproducibility in certain drugs, which are used in mainstream treatment of tuberculosis, like pyrazinamide, ethionamide, and ethambutol. And the other diagnostic tests which are used presently cannot detect mixed infection or heteroresistance, or it cannot detect mixed infection with non-tuberculosis mycobacteria. Now, apart from this, in few of our studies, we have shown that rifampicin resistance, which is responsible for 95% of drug resistance in the RRDR region, we have shown that around 5 to 10% is missed, not only for rifampicin, it is for also INH, wherein it is outside this region and they show phenotypic resistance. So with this, it is very, and apart from that, now the present treatment mode for tuberculosis, MDR-TB is use of newer drugs like bedaquiline, delamanid, linezolid, and clofazimine. And for this, the only method available is phenotypic test, and takes quite a long time. So there's a need for development of newer tools, which molecular tools, which can include these drugs for early detection of drug resistance. So with this, in the present format for DR-TB, one size does not fit all. So we need a tailor-made regimen for drug-resistant tuberculosis, and this tailor-made regimen is possible only by whole genome sequencing. Now the methodology is next-generation sequencing. Now, whole genome sequencing can be done by Sanger's method as well as next-generation sequencing. Sanger's will be again time-consuming, whereas next-generation sequencing is a high throughput parallel sequencing, which can go, which can multiple times sequence a particular genome and give you as sensitive or as specific results as possible. What are the methodologies which are available? There are several methods. Illumina platforms are available, which are more specific and error-free compared to other platforms, which is Nanopore and Torrent. But Nanopore is another promising tool by which we can do diagnosis as a point of care test. So both this methodology has their own disadvantage and advantage. though nanopore lacks some amount of, has a higher rate of error in sequencing. So WGS have been performed in TB so far for as a research tool and for also for creation of database for drug resistance, and it's mostly generally performed on cultures because it needs a relatively high quantity of good quality DNA to generate a full whole genome sequencing. Attempts have been done for whole genome sequencing directly from sputum, but has variable results and had been proven a little on the costlier side compared to other methods. So the applications include diagnosis of drug-resistant tuberculosis, transmission. So single test can answer all this outcomes like diagnosis of DR-TB, transmission dynamics. Then it can also on a longer note, when you keep accumulating the data, it will also tell you drug resistance surveillance. Then approaching new MDR-TB drugs also can be designed based on the data which is available. Now, when it came to these mutations and phenotypic resistance, still people were not very confident on the mutations and to be reported as a resistant. So WHO came up with a data interpretation format wherein they classified each mutation into a high confidence mutations, a moderate confidence, minimal confidence, and so on. So this was further refined by the mutation catalog, which was released by WHO, and this has been already dealt in detail by Dr. Ismael and Dr. Andril. So we, as a country representation, we also created a mutation catalog, and this has been presently sent to WHO to be included in their next updated catalog. In this catalog, we had collected selection of strains from all the states of the country, and we created a mutation catalog which will have more represented mutations from the region of India. So now, as I told you, the method which is available is whole genome sequencing, and this requires high purified growth of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. But that cannot be a choice for routine diagnostic because it takes time. So direct sequencing of sputum sample is possible using targeted NGS, which was described by Andril. And there are several kits available, and as a research center, we also have developed a set of primers for which will cover 18 region which is associated with the drug resistance. And this kit not only will be covering the drug resistance, but also it will tell you the lineage, whether there is a mixed infection, there is a heteroresistance, co-infection, and can identify up to 140 Mycobacterium species. This is just to tell you the difference between targeted NGS and whole genome sequencing approach. Where a whole genome sequencing approach will take close to say a month after culture is ready, whereas targeted NGS can be done directly onto sputum, which will be ready within a week's time. So apart from this, you can also identify non-tuberculosis mycobacterium and their drug resistance as well, as the members of MABM or M-abscess complex are difficult to treat due to drug resistance. Macrolides are the important drugs, and so if you have a mutation detected in this RRL gene, then we don't give that a drug, so we can use other drugs rather than using these drugs initially and see the patient fail on the treatment. So there are other two important genes which can be looked, three important genes in fact. It's RRL gene, ERM gene, and RRS gene, which can decide the course of treatment when you have infection with non-tuberculosis mycobacterium. Now, going on to our experience in transmission dynamics was using whole genome sequencing to differentiate reinfection and relapse in Indian patients with tuberculosis recurrence, and we had collected close to 20 to 23 pairs of samples from HIV negative cohort and HIV positive cohort TB patients. And we found that in mostly HIV negative cohort, the relapse was, you can see that it was the same strain. I mean, the strain difference or the mutational difference was less than 5 SNPs, 5 single nucleotide polymorphism in a particular patient. So we see in HIV negative patient, it is mostly relapse or it is a reactivation of your old bacilli which was infecting, whereas in HIV positive patient, because of their immune status, it is mostly new infection which comes out, which is endogenous reactivation, whereas in HIV negative it is exogenous, in HIV positive it is exogenous reinfection, whereas in HIV negative it is endogenous reactivation. So that's the difference which we can find out using whole genome sequencing by transmission dynamics. Then another study which we carried out was on the creation of database for Mycobacterium tuberculosis genomes from for the isolates from India, and we wanted to describe the accuracy and clinical applicability of this genetic test when we took some first line and second line drugs to define this using phenotypic testing, using phenotypic and genotypic testing. And we also defined the frequency of mixed infection, which was around less than 1% in the cohort which we did. But I'd like to say that the mixed infection will be more appropriate to detect in direct samples rather than culture samples. So this had around 500 MTB isolates, and so this is the sensitivity and specificity of each drug. You can see that when the mutations is in a single gene, or the phenotypic resistance leading mutations are very few, the sensitivity goes high. Say for example, for rifampicin, it's only RPOB gene and it is concentrated in RRDR region, so the sensitivity is high. Whereas if the mutations are throughout the regions of a particular gene, like for example in pyrazinamide, if you have mutation can happen in any of the any place in PNCA gene, then the sensitivity goes down. So and what we also found out, the concordance of each anti-tuberculosis drugs ranged from 81.5 to 96% in both first line and second line drugs, except for ethambutol, which was lower than 72%. We are still working on the newer and repurposed drugs for the same data for this kind of sensitivity and specificity. So the lineage prediction was also done for this set of isolates, and we found that lineage 1 is the most common lineage, and followed by lineage 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this differs in India in different region, and in northern part of India, the lineage is mostly lineage 3, and in northeast part of India, it is lineage 2. So you can see that out of 500 strains which we did, around 3 of them showed mixed infection with lineages, different lineages, and we didn't find any mixed infection with other mycobacteria. Now, this picture shows various lineages, lineage 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it also depicts that the red mark is resistance and the blue is susceptible, and you can see that lineage 2 has more of red in the second line drugs like fluoroquinolone and aminoglycosides. That's more common in lineage 2, and then followed by lineage 3, and then followed by lineage 1 and lineage 4. So we with this study, we came to we looked at the association. We found that lineage 2 is more associated with drug resistance in all the drugs, most of the drugs, and followed by lineage 3, lineage 4, and then lineage 1. So we had a prospective cohort as well, wherein we had 50 pulmonary MDR-TB patients and 100 pulmonary drug-sensitive TB patients, and we looked at the outcome. Like we had around 5 relapse in this cohort 2, 14 failure in cohort 2, and 10 failure in cohort 1, and we looked at their strain differences, and we found that paired samples were there in 29 of them. Out of them, 24 failure and 5 were relapse. Out of that 5 relapse in of cohort 1 and cohort 2, 3 were endogenous reactivation and 2 patients showed exogenous reinfection. And in this cohort, we also saw that one person who had a reinfection has also transmitted to another person. So that was one which we found. So the transmission dynamics is very well studied with a single test, wherein single test will answer you whether it is drug resistance or not, and also whether a particular lineage is growing more or a particular intervention has to be taken in that area. So to conclude, lineage 1 is the most common among MDR strains, which we in our region and also in transmitted group, followed by lineage 4 in the transmitted group. Our results show that WGS can rule in and rule out outbreaks with greater discrimination and can confirm recent transmission events, making it a valuable tool in fight against TB. WGS-based resistance prediction has a huge potential, but care needs to be exercised when implementing this for clinical management, especially for the drugs where the phenotypic-genotypic correlation are less. The technology can be used to complement phenotypic methods in those drugs and additional information of epidemiology, transmission, and spread of mycobacterial tuberculosis. So in addition, TNGS or targeted NGS, which is in implementation stage, or WHO is going to look at it in implementation stage, is also a very good tool for diagnosis of drug resistance. A comprehensive, it will give you a comprehensive drug resistance pattern for treatment of drug-resistant tuberculosis patients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for that interesting presentation. Yeah. So I've seen that there were discussions on the chat, and most of the questions there has been answered. But Rakesh, I'll pass the floor to you so that you can continue with the discussions on the question and answers and the closing remarks. Okay, so thank you very much, Rakesh. Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Mansa. Most of the questions are answered in the chat box itself. Thank you, all the experts and panelists, and Dr. Uroshi and all who is answering all these questions. Thank you so much. There are questions based for stool testing. Especially the questions are like, what are the outcomes while using these stool specimens? What are the implementation challenges that we face while using these stool specimens? And also regarding whether it is applicable to extrapulmonary TB also. Maybe I request to answer these questions. I can ask Nguyen and also Andril to answer these questions. Maybe first to Nguyen and then to Andril. Can you answer these questions with regard to stool sample testing? What are the outcomes? What are the implementation challenges? And is it applicable to extrapulmonary TB also? Andril, are you? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I can't switch on my camera. But anyway, thank you for the questions. And from what we see during all these several years of our experience trying to, to polish this method as much as possible and make it as simple as possible to the end users, we see that after the training, which takes couple of hours of like theoretical part, and then the practical exercise where when the participants are using the stool specimens, they do this testing, and we do video recording of these sessions if we are not able to attend these trainings physically, and then we evaluate the process, and we see whether there are any imperfections in the steps or deviations from the protocol, and then we discuss this with the users. And of course, if we physically present during these sessions, we can give this feedback like immediately. While we do the remote trainings, we this feedback postponed. But anyway, after this, users normally have no difficulties in running the test because it's a simple test. I'm speaking about the SOS method, one of out of 3 methods which was evaluated by GLI. This method is the simplest because it does not require any additional instrumental steps like centrifugation, for example. Yeah, the user performed this test without major difficulties. And in case if they experience some errors, of course, the level of errors, what we see in the beginning could be a bit more higher than normal, but then as soon as users getting more experience, it normalized and it stays at the level usually what we observe for sputum specimen. Of course, to make this process, diagnostic process efficient and demanded, you need to create this demand. You need to build the awareness about the availability of this non-invasive, first of all, method. You need to provide guidance for the healthcare workers involved in the process of the specimen collection, delivery to the laboratory. Storage conditions could be also important because if the specimen could not be delivered immediately, it requires some like cold how to say cold chain before it arrives to the lab. So these sort of things like we normally do with any type of tests which we bring to our practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Andril, for that. We have Dr. Sangeeta Sharma with us. Madam, like, do you have anything to share to us regarding the preliminary results on the ongoing study in India with the stool sample?
Yeah, I would just like to say that, we are assessing 200 samples simultaneously, doing pulmonary specimen as well as stool. And the tests which are being done are expert or TrueNat, ultra, and the comparison. Preliminary results, they show that stool is a better specimen, easy to convenient, of course, and even it has got a higher sensitivity. And ultra, obviously, because the limit of detection is lower as compared to expert, obviously the sensitivity is again higher. So this is the only thing which I have to add, though. But the resistance, obviously, with ultra and culture is a problem.
Rakesh,
Dr. Sangeeta, sir.
Sir, Rohit Sarin, sir, please go on.
Yeah, you see, one thing which I have put in the chat also, and apparently I have not got the response to that, is regarding extrapulmonary TB, because that's another area. Yes, intestinal TB, maybe stool examination could be useful because the site is the one from where you can have the organism. But what about other forms of extrapulmonary TB, gland TB, which is the most common, or for that matter, bone joint TB or genitourinary TB? Whether the stool test will be of any use, that is something which is not clear. So any expert can...
If I may comment on this, of course, stool testing is just an addition to what we already have and to replace some invasive tests. It's not a magic bullet which will cover all the sites where we can detect tuberculosis. I remember one case, I don't remember the country who reported this, but there was a MTBC detected in stool in patient with a disseminated TB. So I think its area is still not very well discovered, and we need to bring other diagnostics method to see whether stool diagnostic of stool is effective in extrapulmonary TB cases or not effective, and till what extent.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, Dr. Urvashi.
So I just wanted to add to what Dr. Sangeeta had said. So we had a study in children using 3 different methods, the SOS, SPK, and one step under a FIND coordinated study, and the results have yet to be published. So we also found good results, but what Dr. Sangeeta said regarding ultra, we all know that the sensitivity is better than expert, while there's a drop in the specificity, especially because of traces. And it's the low load samples where resistance detection also becomes an issue. So these are a few caveats we faced with the use of ultra, which all of us are actually aware of. So, you know, we're gaining in sensitivity and we're losing in specificity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and one more quick comment on this. As we remember, the recommendation of WHO, if we detect a trace result in children, we need to consider it as a positive result. Of course, we will lose the information on resistance, but yeah, even if with other type of specimens, if we have a very low signal, we also see that rifampicin is not available, the information on the resistance.
There is interesting comments put by Fraser, followed by Dr. Sivakumar and Ismael Nazir. So I will take in that order. Fraser, you want to repeat that comment? Then followed by Sivakumar, and then we'll go to Nasir Ismail. Fraser, are you there? Yeah, we will go to Sivakumar then. Dr. Sivakumar.
Thank you. I'll answer both regarding the stool one. I'll like to just add a comment. So the stool is to answer Dr. Sareen's question. It will be mostly pulmonary because sir, the idea behind detecting is that kids swallow the sputum, and that's what comes into stool. And at NIRT, we have developed concentration methods. Basically, we concentrate the stool so that we can get MTB, and then it is subjected to. So we have subjected to both molecular diagnostics as well as culture. We could get few cultures positive, but it is not that effective as molecular diagnostics. That was first. And next thing was on the TNGS and WGS usability. TNGS probably.
Yeah, maybe I've kind of Rakesh has now unmuted me, so maybe I can.
So TNGS is a better tool compared to WGS because of ease of use. It can be directly used on concentrated sputum specimen again. So that's the idea. And WGS can be used for database generation, which this data, once generated along with the phenotypic DST, can be used as a diagnostic tool in TNGS for better reporting. So I see TNGS has more diagnostic value compared to whole genome sequencing in terms of time as well as in terms of capacity.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Shiva. Yeah, Fraser, over to you.
Yeah, like now that I've been unmuted. Yeah, no, the question was kind of from the last presentation from Dr. Sivakumar, and kind of to me, I'm not being a lab expert, it seemed that and kind of whole genome sequencing sounds pretty complex. You need a higher lab, and hence it could be used kind of really more for surveillance and dynamic transmission dynamics. Whereas listening to Andre, I have there are possibilities using kind of technology like MinION, and kind of that this could be a kind of a point of care and kind of test, and hence you may be able to use it as a diagnostic tool and treatment decision-making tool. But I see then kind of there's questions being raised about the validation, and I would throw that back to Dr. Sivakumar and Andre and others, that kind of how close are we to having it? I know this is the kind of goal under the KNCV's Dream Fund, I know, but I would now kind of ask the question of how close are we? Because right at the beginning, there was the statement that although there's lots and lots and lots and lots of new technologies, none of them are being replaced. We still have got sputum all the way up to whole genome sequencing. So it's getting complex for the programs.
Right. Yeah, that's very much true. We still have all the bunch of phenotypic tests. Even microscopy is widely used as a monitoring tool, and there are several things in the pipeline which eventually may, or we hopefully will change this, and we will not use, for example, microscopy as a monitoring tool during the treatment. And of course, the question whether MinION could be a point of care or near to the point of care tests, that's still the question mark, because we are about to evaluate the assay of Oxford nanopore in the coming months, and we'll see how it works, how it's practical, how it's usable. On the other hand, the technology, specifically nanopore technology, is developing so fast that some reports which we are discussing now already losing their, how to say, importance, because the technology within 1 year makes a few significant steps which brings to the next level. So, and again, nanopore technology is moving toward Oxford nanopore, moving toward the how to say, to the process which will remove the lab. So it will be less complex in terms of the processing of the specimen. So their vision is that the specimen will be directly applied to the device, and then the chemistry will do all these necessary steps, and the sequencing will be followed. So that's hopefully our future. How quickly it will become a reality, that's a question.
Yeah, maybe if I can just jump in just quickly on this question about the TNGS and point of care use. So as I mentioned in my slide in the beginning, we are evaluating the current data that's emerging on targeted next-gen sequencing for clinical use. But I think there's multiple things that underpin this, right? Is the design and purpose of the test. So if you're looking at detecting, for example, RUF or INH or fluoroquinolones, we have far more decentralizable tests that are emerging now that can be done battery operated and simpler. In terms of the TNGS solutions, I think these are sort of, while the MinION looks quite exciting in a sense, it looks like a memory stick, but there's a package that goes with it, right? So it's not just that you just plug in something to a computer. There's a PCR process that needs to happen, which is needs equipment, there's DNA extraction, and even the pipeline for analyzing the outputs of that requires a computer. So it's not as straightforward. We see the value of the target injection sequencing, at least trying to address at least maybe screening at a minimum for new and repurposed drugs resistance as an early detector, even though we might still need phenotypes. I think there's a mix that's evolving, but it definitely we expect it to move the field forward in more comprehensive DST. But I think we just need to, I think the TNGS for clinical use, yes, for sure, rather than WGS, because WGS is based on isolates and that, it takes time. But I think over time, we expect the TNGS will start off more centrally and then be decentralized with advancements and combination technologies that we've seen for expert and FlowNet. Hope that clarifies.
Thanks. We have Dr. Camilla also with us. Dr. Camilla, you are doing some work on TNGS, so you want to update us on that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, basically we were part of the Seek-and-Treat, the Unit 8 sponsored FIND study, where we looked at Dplex, the MIC-TB assay, the next-gen RDSD-ABL assay, and the nano-TB drug resistance assay. Is that Oxford Nanopore really did seem to be pretty easy. We're currently evaluating, I'm not in a position to say which is better, but we were really excited with how fast, within 2 days, you can get all results upfront. And we did 400 DR-TB patients who were all proven positive on inclusion, drift resistance on inclusion. So this data is really amazing, and we've just submitted it to FIND. So hopefully Nazir will be able to evaluate it and decide how it can be taken forward.
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Urvashi, your hands is still, yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, we're doing a whole lot of whole genome sequencing, and it's wonderful to know the NGS work several centers are doing. I had one query about the Oxford Nanopore. Isn't the error rate much higher than the other platforms? So,
see, basically there are two versions, the version 1 and the version 2. The version 2 has got really rapid sequencing within 2 hours, and the error rate seems to be down.
Yeah, but most of the published work, brings out a higher error rate. And also, so error rate is something that we have to be careful about. Number one. Number two.
If I
one more point, please. Yeah.
Yes.
Number two, to bring it to POC, it will be a little tricky because though it may appear simple to Camilla, but everybody is not Camilla. So in a practice hand, it could act. One could use it with ease. But in hands which are not doing molecular or sequencing work, it may not be feasible. So I would beg to differ. If you think it can reach the POC, it will still take some time. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may comment on this, on the error rates, indeed, if we read the publications, we see that the error rate was a major concern for the technology. But all these publications probably dated last year, and the studies itself were done like several years ago. And in fact, the technology made several giant leaps, I would say, in last year, and now basically the recent studies shows that there is no difference in accuracy if we compare, let's say, it with Illumina platform. That's one thing. And what else? The second one, the second comment on the level where we can put it. So in KNCV project, we are aiming first of all at the laboratories where currently LPA is available. So as a replacement, for example, for these technologies. So they are technically ready to do sequencing in terms of their skills, pipetting skills, etc. The pipeline for analysis is getting more and more user friendly, and I believe that when the product of Oxford Nanopore will be finalized, it will come with a dedicated software package. In fact, it's already available on their platform. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Shiva?
I'll just add a few comments on the error rate of Nanopore. So error rate, as Andrew said, they are working on the error rate to reduce it as well. So every year it is developing and it is getting reduced. Apart from that, if you see for WGS, the depth which we look at is only 100x, whereas when we go for Nanopore TNGS, the depth which we are looking at is somewhere near 300 times or 500 times. So the error rate is balanced, probably balanced with that. When we compare really the WGS with TNGS, when we look at these two parameters, we really get very concordant results, which at least we have done in few hundred samples and have shown it. And regarding the technology as a point of care test, doing is one part, wherein pipetting and other things will be a little challenge, will be training, but kind of a battery operated item, thing which can be a prospective point of care, yes, then it is a point of care because it can be operated through batteries and doesn't require much of air conditioning or humidity requirements as other platforms require. Thank you.
Thank you all the experts, all the speakers, and all the participants for this brilliant discussions. We learned a lot today. There were many new informations. There were many questions. Some of them were answered, but still we are trying to answer many of the questions through further research kind of stuff. We are not stopping the discussions today. We'll be continuing these discussions. So for the time being today, thank you so much. The video recordings will be shared with all, including the presentations. We will be sharing all the presentations and video recordings with all the participants. We will be continuing this NTB roundtable discussions on a monthly basis. See you next month. Thank you so much, all the speakers and participants. Thank you, KNCV Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rakesh. Thanks to everyone for participation.
Thank you, Rakesh.
And your questions.
Bye.
Band होगी ना?